Welcome to the Two Gurus Talk Compliance podcast with me, Kristy Grant-Hart. I'm here with the one and only Tom Fox. This week, we're covering how boards should prepare for ransomware attacks, whether CEOs are correct that everyone's replaceable, the compliance risks of AI demanding rights if it becomes sentient, and Florida man offering cops a can of vodka spritzer during a police chase. But first, Tom, how has your week been? What is the most interesting development?
I'm going to toot my own horn because I won 5 podcast awards from the Communicator Awards this week.
5. Good
5.
grief. Congratulations. That's amazing.
So a good week for the Tom Fox podcast world.
Isn't it amazing that I get to be part of that? That is fantastic, sir. All right. Where do you want to start? You want to start with ransomware?
I do. And this comes to us from the Harvard Law School Business Forum review. And it's not groundbreaking information, Kristy, but it was the first sort of holistic one article guideline for everything you need to do around ransomware I'd seen in some time. So that's the reason I selected it. It goes through what you need to do to think about for your risk, the risk management strategy you can and should put in place, the people you should notify. Insurance, of course, is a big part of ransomware. What to do if you do have a ransomware attack, how to respond, who you should have respond for you, should you contact law enforcement, etc. It emphasized planning, gaming, what we used to call warboarding. And like I said, it's not anything new, but it was the first article in some time in one place that laid it all out. And although it says the board's role, it's really everyone's role. And that's what I really appreciated, because although it didn't say CEO do this, CIO do this, compliance do this, it laid out all the steps you need to take. So I thought for that reason, it was an excellent review. Jonathan Armstrong has done this multiple times on our data protection podcast. So I knew the steps, I knew they were right. But once again, we had it in one place. Data protection, I won't say has gone away, but it doesn't seem to be at top of anyone compliance related mind right now. Once again, just a good review. And if there's one article you link to, or rather check out from this podcast in the show notes, this is the one I'd save, because you can use this on a go forward basis.
Yeah, it's really good. Ransomware is such a scary idea, Tom. Did you see the Netflix documentary about the ransomware attack on the adult dating website, Ashley Madison? And if you haven't, you should check that out. It's so good, because obviously they're dealing with some pretty sensitive data there in that ransomware attack. But honestly, I think all companies should have a plan. But this really does remind me of the famous Mike Tyson quote that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. But I think that the information is valuable and we should be planning, even if in the reality it would be very difficult to respond.
I'd also add, when you said that, it reminded me that Ally McDevitt, a reporter at Compliance Week, I think 2 years ago, did a 5-part series on the fictional account, but it was based on a true event of a ransomware attack in a major U.S. company. And they allowed her to interview them on the steps they took. And it was a brilliant 5-part series. It laid out everything that is in this article with more explanation. But there are resources out there for people. And I really think that you can plan for this, as unpleasant as it's going to be, and as much as that punch in the face is going to hurt, if you have a plan in place and if you execute on that plan with competent subject matter experts and advisors with appropriate insurance, the pain hopefully will be at least lessened.
There we go. I'm going to say that there is some lessened pain in the compliance world right now. And I'm going to shock you by unironically saying that the Trump administration has done something excellent in the world of compliance. So it is true. Trump issued an executive order that should help stop some modern slavery produced items from entering the United States. So the executive order closed a loophole used by many companies to send smaller packages valued at under $800 from foreign places into the United States without attracting tariffs or review by the Customs and Border Patrol, or CBP. Now, this loophole, which we've talked about numerous times on the Two Gurus Talk Compliance podcast, is called the de minimis exception. And it was created to make it easier for CBP to focus on bigger ticket items, because after all, it is genuinely difficult to police so many imports. So this meant a reduction of the burden. This reduction, however, is something that companies and bad guys noticed. So not only have huge quantities of questionably created textiles in particular and clothing come in these packages, but so has fentanyl, and it's lots of it. So I was shocked, Tom, to read in this article that last year CBP apprehended more than 21,000 pounds of fentanyl at the border, which according to the article writer said that's enough to kill 4 billion people. So half the people of the world could have died from that amount of fentanyl. Chinese companies like Shein and Temu are going to have to pay the full Chinese tariff, whatever that is today, which will likely significantly diminish their ability to ship so cheaply to the United States. As you might imagine, retailers and manufacturers of clothing in the US are particularly delighted with this change, and they think it will create an even playing field. Okay, Tom, we have had this crystal ball question before. We wondered whether de minimis exceptions were going to be here, where they died. They did die. How do you think this changes the game, Tom, if at all?
For anyone who's listened to this podcast consistently, you will know one of the themes Kristy has talked about over the months and now years is modern slavery and human trafficking. And I'm just thrilled that the Trump administration still sees this as the invidious evil that many in the compliance community, including yourself, see. Anything to fight that, I'm in favor of. If the Trump administration wants to cut back on FCPA enforcement to increase the fight against human trafficking, I'm going to be for that because I think it's such like I said, an invidious evil. So great first step. I hope they will continue, and I hope they will enforce this rigorously.
It's kind of exciting, Tom. We actually have something happy and good to say, which has not been true for some time. So I'm taking my wins and celebrating. And also, you've got an interesting, I guess, win. They've got a declination at one of these companies. Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure, we did. We had a declination a couple of weeks ago, or in late April, I should say. I guess that's a couple of weeks ago. And our good friend Mike Volkov reported on his blog, Corruption, Crime, and Compliance. It's I won't try to pronounce the full name of the company, but it's USRA, USRA, found out that one of their employees was selling or transferring information to Beijing, a subsidiary of Beijing University, in violation of export control laws. They self-reported to the government, and they got a declination. And that may not sound like anything new or different to anyone who's listened to our podcast or heard us pontificate over the past 15 years, but it was significant for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was a national security issue, and this administration has made clear that they view export controls as the highest level of national security, even down to corporations, number one. Number two, the company self-disclosed extraordinarily quickly. Number three, they got a full declination because they didn't just self-disclose, they remediated. They did a root cause analysis, determined the internal controls that either failed, were overridden, or were non-existent. They remediated. They terminated the employee who pled guilty to criminal charges. And so they did all of the things that many in the anti-corruption compliance professional space have done for years. But once again, this was a national security issue around export controls. It was the first declination we'd seen in this arena. It was a very powerful statement by this administration that not only do they take this type of violation very seriously, but there are significant benefits to a company which starts out with self-disclosure. And it all starts with self-disclosure, but it also is extraordinary cooperation, extraordinary remediation, and profit disgorgement. And the declination itself, actually the press release was more specific than the declination letter because the press release laid out all the steps the company took, and they linked to the declination policy issued by the National Security Division under the Biden administration. Whatever the Trump administration, whatever they say about the prior administration, they are using parts of the prior administration that we are very comfortable with and we applauded on a go-forward basis. It seems like I went on a long time on that, but I thought it was a very powerful statement, and I hope everyone in the compliance community is aware of this and are reassessing their own programs in light of the statements made about and regarding the declination and indeed the National Security Division's statement on policy on declinations.
The facts of this one were pretty good, Tom, to be fair. The perpetrator, as it were, was independently selling aeronautics information to the Chinese government and had set up shell companies for payments to himself offshore. It was pretty sophisticated. And that was really interesting. Now, I'm sure you saw the DOJ's statements, I believe it from this recording date, it was yesterday or the day before, about what types of white collar crime will be prosecuted. We may go into that next time. But they were obviously still very focused on this self-disclosure, remediation, and cooperation, along with having even fewer monitors, but that's for next time. So the outcome of this case seemed to mirror what happened in the most recent guidance. So is this a good one? Is this a case study for people to bring up?
It is, because it's the first. And I'm not sure you or I or a lot of people in our community really thought through, or we didn't know what the Trump administration would do. So I thought it was a powerful opening statement. Certainly there's going to be needed follow-up and to see if they continue down this route. But it was a great opening statement for compliance that you will get the benefits or the carrots if you follow the self-disclosure policy from the National Security Division.
I like it. Okay, so my next article inspired several conversations at the Compliance Week National Conference, including at our panel, Tom, that you and I did. It's from the New York Times, and it's titled, "If AI Systems Become Conscious, Should They Have Rights?" Which, honestly, even the title, I was like, what? So this article walks up to the point where AI has become sentient. And the question is, if artificial intelligence advances such that it's aware of itself and understands what is happening, should we be creating rights for it? So I asked 4 different experts this question at the conference, and they were genuine experts at it. If AI is going to have rights, do we need access to a whistleblower hotline? Do we need to worry about retaliation? Should we be planning meal and rest breaks for it? And here are the answers. So one expert said he absolutely believes that AI will become sentient and need to have those types of questions answered. Another hedged and said it depends on what you mean by sentient. She believes we'll get there, but is not 100% sure how they'll know when it's happened. The third said that he's not worried about humans giving AI rights. He's worried about what AI will do to us when it becomes sentient if we don't protect it now and make good rules around it, so we're helping it not come after us. And the last one made me laugh. So this expert said that the idea that a machine will become sentient such that it needs rights is absurd. He said, ultimately, it's a software with ones and zeros. It's like saying my lawnmower gets sad and lonely when I don't come out for a beer with it. Ridiculous. Okay, Tom, what are your thoughts about this? Should compliance officers be concerned with the future of AI rights and compliance? Is this on our radars?
I wasn't anticipating the lawnmower reference, and that brings up a lot of times when Mr. Lawnmower had a very bad day with Tommy. And I probably should have been criminally prosecuted for things I did to Mr. Lawnmower in a prior life. Wow. This was settled on Star Trek The Next Generation in the episode LOL, where Data created a sentient being, and he wanted to give it rights. Picard backed him, and Star Trek, the Federation said no. So we've already decided this. Oh. And in terms of Skynet becoming self-aware and attacking America or the world, I haven't got that memo yet either. No.
So you're on the lawnmower side.
I'm on the lawnmower side. Bad day for Mr. Lawnmower.
All righty. Let's switch back to not hypothetical compliance, but realistic non-compliance. Tom, where do you want to go next?
Sure. So we had a big fine levied against Credit Suisse for their, I would call it a problem child, except it's an adopted child. And that was for their purchase of Deutsche Bank. And it wasn't around the purchase itself. It was around Deutsche Bank's bad conduct while it was still Deutsche Bank. But you have vicarious liability when you buy a company that has violated law.
Tom,
Credit
can
Suisse
I stop
had to
you
pay.
real quick? I think it's UBS bought Credit Suisse. I don't think Deutsche Bank is in this. The article is called UBS to pay $511 million for Credit Suisse's failure to live up to the DBA. I just want to make sure we get the right parties involved.
All right, I'll cut that out.
Okay.
I'll give a 5-second silent count on the screen, and you just asked me that again.
All right, Tom, let's go from the non-existent compliance issues to the very real compliance issues. What's up with Credit Suisse?
Credit Suisse, the bad boy banker of the world, for many years, was purchased by UBS at the behest of the Swiss government. And unfortunately for UBS, there was lots of problems in Credit Suisse, one of which was a deferred prosecution agreement from 2012 that they had obligations under and apparently did not meet those obligations. So UBS had to pay a $511 million fine to the United States government for failures to meet their DPA obligations. So it reminds us all once again of the potential vicarious liability in an M&A transaction, although this was not really a transaction. It was a true shotgun marriage with the Swiss government as the unhappy papa here. But the other part that was equally interesting to me, Kristy, that I really wanted to explore perhaps a little more with you was how this information got to the United States government. And it got to the U.S. government via whistleblowers from Credit Suisse. And in fact, they interviewed two of the three, and they said they saw Credit Suisse on television talking about all of the changes they made based upon the DPA, and they knew that not to be true. And they contacted the U.S. government, or they contacted lawyers who contacted the U.S. government. But they were whistleblowers, and it really drove home to me, number one, the power of the U.S. whistleblowing program, because Swiss bankers knew about this program. The U.S. government kept the whistleblowers' names anonymous because, believe it or not, they violated Swiss law by blowing the whistle. So the U.S. government was playing a little fast and loose with Swiss law, but so what? And kudos to these whistleblowers for having that courage to come forward, even though they will be ostracized if their names are ever released. They may be ostracized now, but they might also be subject to criminal prosecution in Switzerland. So for those countries thinking about whistleblower programs and wondering, does it work? This is like case number one for 2025. Yes, it does work, and it works from a country that had the most robust privacy laws other than Luxembourg across the globe.
Yeah, the descriptions of them actually telling U.S. law enforcement where the bankers are going when they're moving, that's incredible, the amount of bravery that is. And yet the Swiss laws are tricky, Tom. I lived in Zurich on and off for 6 months during the LIBOR investigation. I was involved with a financial crime investigation. And we were constantly dealing with pressure from DOJ and other regulators to give them information that included names and potentially accounts. And it was against the law, and it was a horrible game trying to make sure we kept on both sides. So congratulations to those whistleblowers for navigating it and getting this information out there so that justice can be served. And hopefully there will be a difference in how they behave going forward. We shall see. You never know. It could happen. All right. Hope springs eternal around here at Two Gurus. Let's move on to a really sweet piece that I read in Joe Murphy's excellent newsletter, Ideas and Answers. In it, he interviewed compliance publishing wizard Sarah Hadden. So Sarah is the entrepreneur journalist who first ran, then purchased Corporate Compliance Insights. And we frequently cover Corporate Compliance Insight material on this Two Gurus because much of it is outstanding. But it's so interesting because Joe interviewed Sarah's journey from political science major through 20 years of being a journalist in Dallas and Fort Worth area. And then she ran the Corporate Compliance Insight newsletter and website. And then she was a little bit dismayed to find out the owner was retiring. And I love this. She decided to take this huge leap of faith and signed loan paperwork on her 50th birthday to buy the business. She'd hoped to pay back the loan in 5 years, but ended up being so successful that she paid it off in just one. And I love this quote that Joe chose for the title. And she said, "Look, failure was a possibility. It just wasn't an option." Tom, I love this. Good for you, Sarah Hadden, for your success. Obviously, the company has recently published books by Mary Shirley, Adam Balfour, Lisa Fine. And you and I are both entrepreneurs in this field. What struck you about this interview or Sarah's story?
I've known Sarah's story all along. I knew the prior owner of CCI. We're very good friends. I knew when Sarah purchased it. I was extraordinarily excited for her then because I knew the possibilities that were not being realized under the prior owner. He was, or I guess he still is, a recruiter in the compliance space, and it was not his primary job, and Sarah wanted to make it her primary job. She's grown a fabulous platform. It's even when the FCPA blog still existed. It was different enough from the FCPA blog that she was able to create her own audience, and I think it's 30,000 subscribers, I think. She's published a couple of my books. She's done a great service to the compliance community, and she's a part of the Great Women in Compliance podcast and has really stepped out. And I think everyone recognizes the role she's played, what she has done personally with that site, and what it means to giving a platform to voices who want to write about compliance. And she will take submissions and publish them if they meet the editorial guidelines. So it's been a great run for Sarah at CCI, and good luck going forward.
Kudos to her. Now, we follow some scandals that just won't die. For instance, Sam Bankman-Fried. But this is not Sam Bankman-Fried. This is 1MDB, as it were. Tom, what on earth is happening now?
I think we need to have a new segment where we update the odds of Sam Bankman-Fried's pardon. But we're not talking about him, you're right, although I love talking about the pardon he's about to receive. Tim Leissner. Tim Leissner was intimately involved in the 1MDB scandal. He was a Goldman Sachs partner who pushed the loan or the packages that Goldman created, 3 packages at $2 billion each, to raise money for 1MDB that was then looted by J.Lo and the former prime minister of Malaysia and his wife. So he is a major player in this scandal. He pled guilty. He paid back some money, but I also believe he probably squirreled away a lot. Bonuses and proceeds and other monies. And his sentencing has been extended or postponed 10 times now. The reason his name came up for this story was the country of Malaysia wants to extradite him so that they can get additional information to try to uncover places where revenues or other monies might be. Roger Ng, who went to trial and was convicted at trial, he worked for Leissner, has gone to Malaysia and is providing information and cooperating with Malaysian authorities. Leissner is a German national, and Malaysia fears that he will either be given no sentence, be given time served, some minimum time he served, or something else that will allow him to go home to Germany or perhaps even deported to Germany, which does not have an extradition treaty with Malaysia. Leissner, for his part, wants no part of Malaysia, doesn't want to be in Malaysia, doesn't want to talk to Malaysian authorities, doesn't want to be in Malaysian jail or anything along those lines. Once again, under the extradition request was made in August, and it was never decided under the prior administration. It's not been decided under the Trump administration, and there's still no sentencing, although I think he has a summer date once again for a potential
Number 11,
sentencing.
huh?
Number 11. I would have to say that we don't know what his cooperation with U.S. authorities was, but it must have been significant for him to have had his sentencing suspended or postponed, rather, for 10 times, plus the entire scope of what the Department of Justice was able to claw back from Goldman Sachs. Parenthetically, I would note Malaysia wants to reopen its settlement with Goldman Sachs, where I think Goldman Sachs paid $2 billion. They paid $3 billion to the United States. Goldman Sachs says, no, we settled with you and we paid. We're finished. So whether that gets reopened or not under this administration is an open question. But this scandal started in 07 or 08, and it broke in 2015, 2016. And here, 2025, we are still talking about it like it's a real thing.
Yeah, it definitely has been a real thing. But I got to say, the part of this article that was most interesting to me related to Mr. Jolo or J-Lo. And by the way, that is Mr. It's not the pop singer. She was not involved, although Leonardo DiCaprio was, the whole thing. So this person, he stole a lot of money, bought a super yacht, financed the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, then went rogue and is now fugitive. Whenever the movie based on his story comes out, I am all in. I've already got my popcorn. That's a good one, right? That's going to be a really good one when it eventually comes out. All right, let's go to my next article, which is ominously titled, Everybody's Replaceable, The New Ways Bosses Talk About Workers. So it was published in the Wall Street Journal, and it's a stark reminder of how much has changed for employees since the hazy summer days of the Great Resignation. Tables have turned, and that's for sure, with more and more bosses telling employees to shut their mouths and stop complaining. Be happy you have a job because AI is coming for you if you don't want it. Some of the statements in the article were a little shocking to me in their candor. For instance, the CEO of the clothing label Good American said, "Work-life balance is your problem." And JP Morgan's CEO had a bad moment at an internal meeting that was leaked. The meeting was about the unpopular return to work in the office mandate. And in the meeting, the CEO said he didn't care about employee complaints and said, "I've had it with this kind of stuff. I've been working 7 days a week since COVID, and I come in here and where is everybody else?" Unquote. The CEO at Fiverr said, "AI is coming for your jobs. This is a wake-up call. Those who will not wake up and understand the new reality fast are, unfortunately, doomed." That's cheery. The article finishes with a professor of management saying, "Don't worry, folks. This is all cyclical. Employee talent will be all the rage again soon." Tom, do you agree with that? Is this cyclical, or is there some sort of a fundamental change in the employer-employee relationship?
I should probably share that my boss at the Compliance Podcast Network continually reminds me that I can be replaced at any time. I've asked for Friday afternoons off for a long time, and he says, "Absolutely not. I'm going to be here. You're going to be here." And so I completely get it. What was interesting to me, Kristy, was the phrase, "everyone's replaceable." Because in the corporate world, we used to use that phrase to think about what happens when a key employee falls under a bus. And we use that example specifically, except we were doing it in terms of knowledge transfer and knowledge sharing. That not to say the company's going to fold because our top salesman leaves or something happens to him or her, but what happens if their knowledge is removed from the company, and how do you rebuild from that? So I'm incredibly comfortable with the phrase, "everyone's replaceable," because everyone will be replaced at some point. The point back then, at least for me, was how are we as a company going to deal with that employee leaving? More importantly, that knowledge, that institutional knowledge. And if you fire all the old guys so that you have young, innovative people who want to work hard, that's great, except they don't have the institutional knowledge that you need to mentor them. So it's a very holistic package that you need to have in terms of generations, of talent, of gender, and a variety of other things. You and I both grew up in law firms, so I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who say, "You're making me work too hard." And my boss is a jerk. What can I say?
Yes, you talking about yourself as replacing yourself is a very peculiar idea, but there we are. Tell me about risk paralysis, Tom. What is it and why are we worried about it?
So this came to us from the Financial Times, and I wouldn't say an op-ed piece, but a business opinion piece. And I really thought it was a good way, and it almost frames up with the first article on boards and ransomware. And the reporter or the columnist's point was, things are changing so quickly. How are you going to manage that risk? And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, Upping Your Game, because we are in an unprecedented period of change. And how are you going to manage that risk? And how are you going to identify the risk, assess the risk, and have a risk management strategy in place when you don't know what may happen tomorrow? And at Compliance Week, I had a long talk with a friend whose wife is at a major corporation, U.S. manufacturing corporation, and he was telling me everything they did to get ready and implement a policy around the first round of tariffs. And they worked very hard at literally CEO, chairman of the board, CEO, GC level people preparing for this. And 48 hours later, everything they had done and put in place was no longer valid or no longer needed. And their feeling was not so much relief, but we'd done all this work and it just poof, went away. The need for it went away. And so that's what the business we're in. And so what I really wanted people to think about is, are you paralyzed because risk is changing so quickly? Are you paralyzed because you don't know what your risk is going to be literally 48 hours from today? And my response is, you need to prepare for change. You need to prepare for new risks, and you can use AI, particularly in the compliance space, to do that. And we as compliance professionals are the most well-suited corporate function, in my opinion, to respond to the ever-changing face of risk, because that's what we do every day, whether it's a third party, whether it's a new customer, whether it's a new geographic source for materials, whether it's a conflict mineral, whatever it may be. But we identify a risk, we assess that risk, we put a risk management strategy in place, we train on that risk, and then we implement and then monitor the results of our risk management strategy and improve as appropriate. And that framework or that format, I think, can allow you to respond to risks as they change literally on the fly. So once again, you've got me on my complete soapbox here, but I just want people to understand the author or the reporter or the opinion at this point was, we're seeing risk. I'm seeing risk paralysis. My point is, let's talk about it, but let's fix it.
I liked the damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for so many leaders, where they need to make decisions quickly, but if they make the wrong decision, things go poof, and it's just really hard. I like the line about how the only scenario people don't plan for is the scenario no one thought could happen, which then does. But that kind of describes the world right now. I really believe that no one who isn't living right now would believe how it is all going at the moment, but we have to respond to that risk.
Do you mean a first worldwide pandemic in 100 years? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah. All right, shall we take this party home with Florida Man?
God bless Florida Man.
There's no other way to end this party. 39-year-old Richard Smith, the Florida man in question, went into the Spring Lake market and stole several items, including some liquid courage. So instead of making a clean getaway, he decided to drive circles around the store. Employees called the police, and when they arrived, Smith floored the gas and fled the scene, leading to a miles-long chase inside the Sunshine State. Then things got intoxicatingly weird. So as deputies tried to stop Mr. Smith, he reached out his window not with a white flag, but with a can of Kettle One vodka spritz. The police appeared confused as Mr. Smith said to them, "I was just going to give you a drink." Sadly for Mr. Smith, the deputies declined, and he sped off and tried to ram 2 patrol cars, which certainly put a dent in his argument that he meant no harm. The police responded with spike strips, which blew out his tires. Then Mr. Smith gingerly got out of the car, lit a cigarette, and tried to walk casually away. For reasons best known to himself, he was surprised to be tased. And he said to the officer, "Wait, why am I being arrested?" And the officer said, "Yes, you are being arrested." And he said, "You guys had fun, though." Mr. Smith is facing a cocktail of charges, including DUI, resisting arrest, assault, theft, and refusal to take a DUI test. He was ultimately kind of successful, though, Tom. He tried to give the cops alcohol during the chase, and while he did end up behind bars, it was not the kind of bar he was hoping for.
Southerners are known for their hospitality.
Indeed they are. Thank you for joining us on the Two Gurus Talk Compliance. I'm Kristy Grant-Hart.
And I'm Tom Fox.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.